chosen one, the moment you stopped moving according to the version of you that lived inside their expectations. Something fractured in the room, not visibly at first, no alarms, no clear rupture, just a subtle disorientation that spread quietly, like air pressure changing before a storm. Conversations didn't stop, they multiplied. Voices didn't sharpen, they scattered. And beneath all of it sat a single shared discomfort no one could quite name. This is the moment no one prepares you for, because it isn't dramatic in the way people recognize. It's disorienting. It's quiet chaos, and it always arrives wrapped in noise. When something occurs that has no precedent in someone's internal archive, clarity is not the response. Commentary is. Speech becomes a stabilizer when control slips. Words rush in not to explain, but to soothe the nervous system. That is why messages light up, side channels hum, old names resurface from dormant places. People who have not thought of you in years suddenly find your presence heavy in their mouths. And yet, listen closely. For all the discussion, not one of them can tell a clean story about what you actually did. There is no shared account, no solid explanation, only echoes. There is a reason for this, and it has nothing to do with your behavior being reckless or unclear. The human mind is deeply disturbed by gaps. When an event violates expectation and refuses to fit an existing mental category, the brain experiences strain. It scrambles to resolve the blank space, so it fills it with theories, jokes, assumptions, exaggerations, anything but silence, anything but admitting, I don't know. What you are hearing now is not understanding. It is panic given permission to speak. You didn't shatter a rule. You removed a reference point. And that is far more destabilizing. Rules invite rebellion. Reference points anchor reality. When someone acts cleanly, without drama, without justification, without visible emotional charge, the system that observes them freezes. It is like watching someone step off a game board entirely while everyone else is still arguing about strategy. The confusion is not hostile at first. It's uneasy, awkward. People laugh while saying your name, then trail off mid-sentence. They lower their voices without knowing why. They say things like, I can't explain it, but something feels off. Translation: the internal script they relied on just crashed, and there is no recovery available. You became a topic not because you demanded attention, but because you withdrew predictability. Not because you explained yourself, but because you didn't need to. Everyone is speaking, yet no one can give a straight account, and that is not coincidence. That is the natural consequence of a move made from clarity. Most people never visit that place without permission, so stay with me here. Once you understand why this reaction is happening, the impulse to explain yourself dissolves completely. First, you disrupted a pattern they were using to forecast you. People may not study others deeply, but they track rhythms quietly, subconsciously. They notice when you hesitate, when you soften, when you over-explain, when you bend. Over time, they stop seeing a living person and begin seeing a sequence. If pressure appears, you respond like this. If ignored, you return like that. This is how comfort is maintained, not through understanding, but through prediction. What you did didn't confuse them because it was extreme. It confused them because it did not align with your past behavior. You didn't respond the way history suggested you would. You didn't stall. You didn't cushion the impact. You didn't add disclaimers to make it easier for others to digest. You moved in a way that offered no emotional data for prediction, and that is what ignited the noise. People do not talk this much when something fails. They talk this much when their mental shortcuts stop working. Suddenly, the assumptions they leaned on feel unreliable. The version of you they thought they had solved no longer appears. And rather than admitting their understanding was shallow, they rush to reinterpret your action in a way that restores their sense of control. That is why narratives begin forming immediately. Labels, reframes, amateur analysis, even admiration disguised as humor. Not because they now know more, but because they know less. When predictability vanishes, most people do not sit with uncertainty. They replace it as quickly as possible. What unsettles them most is that you did not signal the shift. There was no visible struggle they could monitor, no gradual arc they could track. One moment you were familiar, the next you were not. And that kind of transition forces an uncomfortable realization. They were never reading you deeply. They were only tracking habits. Once habits stop defining you, access disappears. That is why the response feels disproportionate. You did not simply change direction. You removed yourself from their internal map. Now they speak loudly, not to understand you, but to regulate themselves. Second, you acted without requiring their reaction to legitimize the move. Most people live as if every decision is a request for approval. Even bold actions are quietly negotiated in advance. They scan faces, they weigh moods, they adjust timing, they ask without speaking, "Is this acceptable?" You did not do that. You did not pause to see who would be comfortable. You did not measure the temperature of the room. You moved straight through, anchored in your own timing and reasoning. That level of independence is unfamiliar to most observers. It feels almost foreign. They are not disturbed by the outcome itself. They are disturbed by what it reveals about their own dependency on feedback loops. Your action refuses to fit into any framework they rely on. It cannot be reduced to cause and effect because it did not originate from external validation. You acted from an internal compass, and that makes the move uncontainable. They replay it, dissect it, discuss it endlessly, searching for a rationale that requires no explanation. Acting without validation is not defiance. It is self-trust. And self-trust exposes hesitation in others. It reveals that their constant checking, justifying, and delaying has always been optional. That realization is threatening. Your move did not just alter a situation, it disrupted their understanding of how reality operates. It forced them to confront the fact that someone can act autonomously, untethered to approval, and still move forward with precision. This is why it feels impossible to explain. You did not simply make a choice. You demonstrated that permission was never required. And that truth is more unsettling than any conflict they could have prepared for. Chosen one, there is another layer beneath their confusion, and it cuts deeper than reaction or surprise. You stepped out of a role they had already written for you. Most people never notice when it happens, but the world runs on casting. From the first few interactions, others begin assigning positions. You become the reliable one, the silent supporter, the problem solver, the one who absorbs pressure. Sometimes you're cast as the struggler, the almost there, the one who tries hard but never quite arrives. These roles are not spoken aloud, but they are rehearsed constantly in the background of other people's minds. They learn how you respond, how much you tolerate, how far you bend before you resist. Slowly, your identity is folded into their private narrative. It is efficient, it is comfortable, it allows them to feel oriented. When you act outside that assigned function, the collapse is immediate, not because you violated a moral line, but because the story they depended on can no longer continue. They do not know where to place you. They cannot rank you. They cannot predict how to interact with you next. Ambiguity enters, and ambiguity terrifies the unprepared mind. You did not announce a transformation. You did not explain a new chapter. You simply stopped performing the part they expected. That refusal is louder than any declaration. It exposes a painful truth. They never knew you. They only knew the version of you that fit their convenience. The moment you withdrew from that framework, panic set in. Gossip, speculation, manufactured motives. All of it is an attempt to regain authorship over a narrative that no longer belongs to them. Stepping out of a mental role is not rebellion, it is sovereignty. You did not argue with their script. You exited the stage entirely, and when someone leaves the structure that once defined them, those still inside scramble to explain the absence. They speak as if control still exists, but it doesn't. You have moved into a space where your choices are no longer accessible to their interpretation. That freedom unsettles them because it forces a reckoning. Their assumptions were never truth. They were convenience. And when that realization lands, it doesn't just change how they see you. It destabilizes how they see themselves. There is more. You also acted in a way that did not align with your past wounds. People are conditioned to read others through history. Every scar becomes a forecast. Every moment of pain is quietly logged and reused as predictive data. If they have seen you hesitate before, they expect hesitation to continue. If they have witnessed fear, they anticipate caution forever. They do not see growth as a living process. They see trauma as destiny. So when you moved without flinching, without delay, without fear-coded behavior, it sent a shock through their mental architecture. They were prepared for the echo of old patterns. Instead, they encountered clarity. You chose intention over reflex, decision over survival, presence over reaction. This is not complicated. It is unprecedented within their experience of you. And people do not panic over complexity. They panic when the reference they rely on no longer exists. What unsettles them most is not the move itself. It is what the move implies. It suggests that history is not a prison. That pain does not get the final word. That behavior is not permanently dictated by what has already happened. Your action exposes how deeply they have internalized limitation. They have been trained to believe that wounds govern identity. When you act outside that belief, it confronts them with a possibility they are not ready to face. That healing is real, and that choice can exist beyond fear. This is why their reactions feel disproportionate. They are not responding to your decision. They are responding to the collapse of a worldview that depended on your staying the same. You did not narrate your evolution. You embodied it. Most people think growth must be announced, explained, documented. They believe change requires a preface and a performance, so they post it. They justify it. They wait for applause. You did none of that. You simply moved differently, and the difference was unmistakable. Real growth does not ask for attention. It commands it through action. You did not prepare the audience. You altered the behavior. Every choice you made carried the quiet signature of development. That kind of shift cannot be debated. It cannot be reduced. It cannot be anticipated. It leaves observers scrambling because their tools for measurement no longer work. They are accustomed to visible struggle, to drama, to conflict as proof. You offered none of that. You removed the spectacle. And in doing so, you shifted the power dynamic without confrontation. Now they are forced to watch, interpret, and react without ever gaining leverage. Their endless conversation is not insight. It is disorientation. You also refuse to perform emotion for their comfort. This is where the disturbance deepens. Emotion, for most people, is transactional. They expect it to appear on cue. Sadness when sadness is expected. Anger when provoked. Relief when resolution arrives. These reactions reassure them that reality is behaving correctly. When you withhold that performance, the rhythm breaks. You did not cry when anticipated. You did not explode when baited. You did not soften your response to make others feel secure in their interpretation of you. This is not coldness. It is authorship over your inner world. And that level of self-possession is rare enough to feel threatening. By choosing when and how emotion is expressed, you removed yourself as a reference point in their emotional ecosystem. They can no longer use your reactions to orient themselves. So they search, retroactively. They replay conversations. They look for cracks. There are none that satisfy. What you have revealed is simple and destabilizing. Emotion is personal, not performative. And your inner life is not a public utility. This exposure creates panic because it dismantles dependency. It shows how much of the world relies on borrowed emotional cues to feel stable. By refusing to supply those cues, you didn't just protect yourself. You collapsed a framework they were unconsciously using to contain you. And still, the layers continue. You took power without asking permission to be resented. Most people don't realize they live inside an invisible negotiation. They advance only if the room allows it. They succeed only if the faces around them tolerate the change. Even confidence is often packaged to reduce backlash. They anticipate jealousy, manage outrage, soften their edges, and call it wisdom. In their world, power is always a trade. You gain it, but you must pay for it in appeasement. You didn't play that game. You moved as if your authority didn't require their consent, and that is precisely what made your action feel unreal to them. They are accustomed to watching people ask for permission with their posture, their tone, their apologies, their hesitation. You offered none of those signals. You didn't scan for approval. You didn't brace for resentment. You didn't wait to see who would be threatened. You claimed your space as if it was already yours, because in truth, it was. That kind of freedom is rare, and rarity feels dangerous to those who have built their lives on social bargaining. So they talk, they label, they invent explanations. They pretend they are analyzing you, but they are really trying to recover a sense of leverage. Because if someone can step into power without negotiating the emotional comfort of observers, then the whole system of silent control collapses. Their endless commentary is not about your choice. It is the sound of their realization that their influence was never real. Then you ended a dynamic that benefited them more than it benefited you. This is one of the most violent shifts a person can make without raising their voice. Some relationships, situations, and arrangements survive only because you keep supplying the fuel. Your patience, your labor, your availability, your tolerance. Over time, they stop seeing these as gifts. They start treating them like infrastructure, like something that will always be there. When you removed yourself from that imbalance, it didn't just inconvenience them. It exposed dependency they had been pretending wasn't dependency. They had built comfort on your consistency. They had built stability on your willingness to keep absorbing the weight. And when that weight was no longer accepted, the whole structure shook. That is why they reacted with confusion and outrage wrapped in concern. They weren't prepared to face the fact that they had been taking more than they were giving, even if they never said it out loud. So again, they scramble for stories. They project motives. They call it selfishness. They call it sudden. They call it out of character. They can't accept the simplest truth. You didn't do it to punish them. You did it to reclaim yourself, to stop feeding a system that required your sacrifice to survive. They are talking because the arrangement they relied on evaporated, and they need a narrative that makes them the victim instead of the beneficiary. But your silence refuses to cooperate with their preferred ending. You also made peace with being misunderstood. This is a turning point most people never reach. They spend their entire lives trying to be correctly interpreted. They over-explain. They perform their intentions. They chase clarity as if it were oxygen. And they don't see that the need to be understood is a leash. It binds them to the reactions of others. It keeps them editing their truth to fit someone else's comprehension. You refused that leash. You acted without demanding agreement. You moved without needing anyone to see the full picture. This is why observers become restless. Misunderstanding removes their ability to negotiate with you. If they understand you, they can debate you. If they understand you, they can persuade you, shame you, or redirect you. But if you are no longer seeking to be understood, their tools stop working. No argument lands clean. No label sticks long enough. No assumption can fully contain your intent. So they talk more. They gather in circles. They compare theories. They look for a frame that will hold you. But you are not operating inside their frames anymore. By making peace with misunderstanding, you didn't become reckless. You became immune. And that immunity feels like a threat to anyone who depends on narrative control. And then, you didn't replace them. You outgrew the entire context. This is where their confusion becomes almost frantic, because most people can understand replacement. They can handle it when someone swaps one job for another, one friend group for another, one relationship for another. Replacement still honors the old world. It keeps the same frame intact. It says, "I'm still inside the same game. I just changed pieces." You didn't do that. You didn't move to a different seat at the same table. You left the table. You expanded beyond the room they were measuring you in. You didn't trade old for new. You evolved past the category itself. And when someone outgrows a context, those who remain inside it cannot explain the departure in terms that keep their worldview stable. Because outgrowing the context means your choice wasn't about them at all. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't competition. It wasn't even rejection in the way they want to define it. It was alignment, expansion, a quiet admission that the old rules no longer apply to you. They cannot process that because they have been taught that people only leave for external reasons, someone else, something else, a better offer, a more attractive option. They don't know what to do with a person who leaves for themselves, so they manufacture explanations that reduce your growth to something small enough to digest. They try to pull you back into their equation, but you are no longer a variable they can solve. You stepped outside the math. You also refused to carry their emotional aftermath. Most people assume that when they feel messy, someone else will help clean it up. They create confusion, then expect you to clarify it. They overreact, then expect you to soothe it. They behave poorly, then expect you to restore the relationship through patience and labor. This expectation is so common, it becomes invisible. It's presented as loyalty, kindness, or maturity, when often it is just outsourcing responsibility. You refused. You didn't step in to manage their discomfort. You didn't become the mediator of their panic. You didn't package your boundaries in soft language so they could feel righteous while crossing them. You set the line and let them deal with the consequences of their own feelings. That is not cruelty. That is self-respect. It is the recognition that your energy is not an emotional landfill for people who refuse accountability. And when you enforce that boundary, the backlash becomes loud, not because you did harm, but because you stopped being useful in the old way. They gossip because they want to make your boundary look like an offense. They speculate because they want to turn your clarity into a puzzle they can solve, rather than a line they must honor. They are not confused by your action. They are angry at the loss of access. Then, beneath all of this, there is a quieter truth that frightens them more than confrontation ever could. You acted from precision, not urgency. Most people confuse movement with haste. They make choices while pressured, reactive, afraid of missing something, afraid of being left behind. Even when they appear calm, there is often a hidden desperation driving their timing. They are used to seeing big decisions wrapped in frantic energy, visible stress, dramatic explanation. You didn't bring any of that. You moved with a calm that didn't seek reassurance. Your timing didn't broadcast struggle. Your decision didn't leak panic. It looked simple, almost too simple, and that simplicity disturbed them because it did not match how they believe power is supposed to look. Their minds cannot map your calm into their understanding of change, so they fill the gap with talk. They search for chaos because chaos is familiar. But you did not act from chaos. You acted from alignment, and alignment is hard to argue with. That is why the room gets noisy. Because your quiet is louder than their questions. You exposed how loud confusion becomes when authority is lost. People depend on a sense of hierarchy, even when they pretend they don't. They depend on knowing who holds influence, who can be pressured, who will fold, who will return, who will comply. It gives them structure. When someone removes themselves from that invisible hierarchy by acting outside its reach, the structure wobbles. The wobble sounds like debate. It sounds like analysis. It sounds like concern. But it is really the nervous system of a group trying to reconstruct order. They raise their voices because their certainty is collapsing. They talk over one another because no one wants to be the first to admit they don't understand. The louder the confusion, the more obvious it becomes that the authority they relied on was never stable. It was conditional, dependent on your predictability. And when predictability left, their usual tools, blame, manipulation, pressure, failed to restore control. Finally, you became proof that their limits were never universal. This is the deepest offense to the comfortable mind. Many people treat their inability as a law of nature. What they cannot do, they assume no one can. What they cannot endure, they assume no one should. They build a world from their own ceilings and call it reality. Then you move in a way that ignores that ceiling, and suddenly their truth is revealed as a choice they made and never questioned. Your action becomes a mirror. It reflects everything they have refused to attempt, every risk they have avoided, every boundary they have been too afraid to set, every step they postponed while waiting for permission. They don't just witness your move, they feel accused by it, even if you never said a word. That is why they need explanations. Because if your freedom is real, then their captivity has been voluntary. So they search for flaws in you. They search for secret motives. They search for reasons your move doesn't count. Anything that allows them to keep their limits intact. But the evidence is standing in front of them. You did what they told themselves was impossible. You moved without begging. You changed without announcing. You advanced without bargaining. And now the air around you has changed, because possibility has entered the room without asking permission. And when all of these layers stack together, chosen one, you begin to see the true shape of what's happening. Their voices aren't tracking your behavior. Their voices are tracking the collapse of the version of reality that depended on you staying manageable. Chosen one, when you look at it clearly, the reason they are speaking without understanding becomes undeniable. What you did was not dramatic, and it was not hidden. It was decisive. Every movement you made carried the weight of autonomy. You dismantled patterns they relied on, acted without needing their agreement, stepped out of the identities they assigned you, and made choices that no longer bowed to the shadow of your past. You did not announce growth. You embodied it. You did not negotiate comfort. You chose truth. You did not seek permission. You exercised sovereignty. You refused to emote on demand. You refused to dilute your authority to make others feel safe. You claimed ground without asking who might resent it. You ended arrangements that drained you while sustaining them. You didn't trade places within the same environment. You expanded beyond the environment altogether. You declined the responsibility of carrying their emotional fallout. You acted from clarity rather than pressure, and in doing so, you revealed how fragile their sense of order really was. That is why the reaction feels so disproportionate. They are not responding to a single decision. They are responding to a collapse. Their assumptions fell apart. Their narratives lost traction. Their influence evaporated, and now they are left circling an event they cannot contain with language, because language was never the source of your power. They cannot explain what you did because explanation assumes access, and you are no longer accessible in the way they expect. Your action was not mysterious. It was real. It did not rely on interpretation. It did not bend to expectation. It did not wait for applause. It moved forward whether they understood it or not. This is the quiet authority that leaves rooms buzzing long after you exit. Not noise, not spectacle, not argument, but presence. The kind of presence that exposes how much of the world is built on compliance, predictability, and fear of standing alone. When someone operates from self-possession, the systems around them panic because they were never designed to handle independence. The chatter you hear now is not a judgment on you. It is evidence of disruption. It is the sound of people trying to orient themselves in a reality where they no longer set the rules. They talk because silence would force them to face the truth, that control was never theirs, and that your freedom did not require their understanding. Remember this: power is not measured by how many people agree with you, applaud you, or can neatly summarize your decisions. Power is measured by your ability to move with precision, integrity, and independence while the world scrambles to catch up. Their confusion is not a problem to solve. It is a signal that something fundamental has shifted. You did not confuse them by accident. You liberated yourself on purpose.